Happy Juneteenth. Today on LOL, we're talking about love and freedom.
But can we have both? So we're talking about merging our personal sovereignty with relationships on LOL tonight.
I don't just talk stuff and repeat stuff. I'm living this stuff.
And you can thank me for covering your astro.
Leading out loud, leading out loud, leading out loud.
Welcome to Leading Out Loud, the shift show that takes all things spiritual and gets to the truth without humor. I'm psychic astrologer Sensei Christopher Witecki.
And I'm Scott Cruz, psychic medium and mentor with scottcruzpm.com. How's your week been, Christopher? Every week I ask.
I feel this week has been kind of like ever since the full moon, I've been in a bubble. I've been in a vortex. You know, time space is weird. You know, I'm just kind of going through it like a long music video sequence in a film. But I feel we're in transition. I feel I'm in transition anyways. And so transitions I'm not crazy about. I'm like traveling, like being in the airport. Transitions I don't like. So I just sort of sit there and try to do my best to get through it.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of feel the same introspective energy, right? Just kind of like second questioning a couple things about direction, about what I'm doing, if I'm doing the right thing or not doing the right thing. So it's been very introspective. And you know, I've said last week that this is a time of revelation. I know it sounds like a big grandeur word, right? But revelation is like just revealing those things that perhaps you were not paying attention to before, you know? And so I'm starting to feel a lot of that too, you know, coming through within me and peeking through. So yeah, that could be very isolating. Right. But I do feel that isolation coming out. I'm coming out of that isolation as I see others doing too. My reads, they're starting to kind of come out of that isolation period and feeling a zest, even though they don't know what it is yet, but they're starting to feel a little bit of zest that will pull them forward.
Well, I've returned to a state I used to live in. I mean, which is like this creative state. I guess if anything, I have to finish the last chapter before I start the new. And so, you know, I don't have any time to think about the fun stuff or whatever. You know, I'm literally between, I think, programs right now.
Right.
I'm just trying to get as much of the new as I can in. But I feel I feel really good. The energy feels good. I was way out of touch with all the headlines going on. So I was, that Jupiter and all that Gemini energy, it's really finding a new mindset. And I had a couple of huge breakthroughs as far as mindset. But it's so funny because the breakthrough is always so simple. And whenever I tell people like, yeah, you're like, yeah, oh, okay. They don't understand it. But you never have like a simple realization that just changes everything. And even when someone hears it, they're like, they don't get it. It's because it's just they don't get it because it's just such a like personal thing. You know what I mean? I've had a couple of those.
Personal. Yeah, it's personal, but a lot of times it's very simple too. So if you tell someone, like, I've been working on self-love, like I found self-love, people are like, okay, but the experience that you went through regarding self-love was very deep. And so, they won't get it because it might sound simplified to them, or thinking that, oh yeah, well, I've learned that before, or, so yeah, I think that it is simple, but it does go deep when you go in those periods, very deep. And that could be uncomfortable for a lot of people who are not used to going deep.
Yeah, that surprises me. I can't keep it shallow. It's hard for me to keep things. My mind wants complex stuff. I don't know. It's just or I will make it complex. That's a problem. My problems will turn into a complex manifestation. But yeah, I'm with you. I think people are updating their mindset. And for me also, it's also coming out of a certain mindset that kept my own mind keeping me prison. Right. And it's this idea that we're in heaven right now in a dream. That perception of reality to me just blows the lid off of everything for me. It's very simple, but it basically just gives me free permission to do whatever I create my heart wants. And so there was a critic, my own critic on me. I have Saturn in Gemini. So I realized I was living under my self-criticism, and I just need a new world model, reincarnation model. And once I had the new reincarnation model, then boom, everything just clicked into what I wanted.
Understanding that idea makes you have a little bit of healthy sense of detachment. And that's, I think, what a lot of us have to do is understand how to slightly detach more from our experiences. So when we feel like we are in that video game from heaven, we at least have the God perspective to be more broader on our perspective and objective on it. Because too many people, we suffocate the things in our lives and we wonder why they run away or fall apart. It's like we should be suffocating. We need that healthy sense of detachment, but that's what you've been doing. And so I think that's powerful because, once you get to gain that objectivity, that opens up new doors to new relationships.
Oh, yeah. But that's not what we're talking about tonight. Is my
It
relationships.
is.
But ultimately, I feel yes. And at the end of the day, we are talking relationships, and I think you're right. I feel for me in relationships. I mean, we'll talk about it in our actual topic, but
Yeah.
I've always just felt like it's going to happen when it's meant to happen, which is knowing charts and astrology charts and seeing so many couples. I don't feel any control over the timing of that. I think it's already
Right,
been
of course.
set. So
Of course.
I'm a little different when it comes to those things. But we actually have a little game to play today, Scott. Another
All
game.
right.
Gamifications. This one isn't so much a game. This is more like a collective read in the sense that, doing research today is about relationships. We're talking about sovereignty and relationships. And sovereign is a real popular word. I first heard it with Mary Magdalene, actually, in the Christa's work. I was like,
Yeah.
sovereign. That's interesting. And then it started just popping up everywhere, sovereign. I see people using it everywhere. And it's like, I don't know if it was me not paying attention or I don't know, kind of thing. It's like when your wife is pregnant, you suddenly notice every Pampers commercial, every baby commercial on
100%.
TV. And
Yep.
you're just like, like, were these always all the year? Kind
Right.
of thing. Like, I don't remember this. So weird. It's like a weird mandala, kind of inside out mandala effect. So, so
Mandela.
that said, yeah, thank you. Mandela. Americans, are where they are. And that's the question. Where are Americans in this concept? Because there's a lot of trending going on in media and social media and stuff like that. But social media does not equal the American population. And I'm sticking to America because that's our primary audience. We're not being rude to other countries. I think it's better just, hone in on one that we know and we can communicate as an example. So that said, I'm wondering what your collective read is on these trends that are happening right now. Where do you sense Americans are with emerging relationship trends happening today, particularly the trend of meeting for the first time, talking, and even having sex on camera in Zoom rooms before you meet in person?
Well, obviously that trend is going to die. I mean, that's obviously something that people are going to snap out of that haze. So it's not so much that what we're seeing on camera is the new thing. It's the fact that everything is on camera is that new thing. So, and I think this is really what's affecting relationships and why people are doing these things, because we're always been this state of like egotism, in our culture, kind of look at me, but it's also an open door to teach about self-love. So I think we need to be focusing on the fact that why does everything that we do have to be recorded? Right. And why do we have to present it to everybody? So I think that's the new, I would say, perspective we need to be focusing on to help understand our relationships, or at least participate in the relationships.
It's interesting. Do you feel Americans are on board with this, or this is just like a select few?
As far as on board with this change, you're saying?
Well, just having sex on camera. I mean, like literally
Well, I
keeping
think
the bedroom camera.
we've been seeing it, but we've been seeing it for a while too, Christopher. Look at the sex tapes that came out. That's how the Kardashians are big. They had a freaking sex tape. So in a sense, that's like that. We've been doing that for such a long time, and that was the birthing where the manifestation of the egotism energy came about with all this time that we're in, the period that we're in. So it's already happening. A lot of people are doing this. OnlyFans, right?
Well, that's my point. I mean,
It's big now.
Well, yes, I mean, when I grew up, you had to hide the magazine in between your bed.
Right.
Like
right.
it was shameful and it was private. And like now, young people are very familiar with porn. They're very familiar with sorts of things. But this is actually even more interesting to me because I never suspected in my third eye that we'd be networking sex videos from our bedrooms. Like I never went there. I was like, what? But then when you think about it, you're like, interesting. It's kind of like inviting me to your bedroom, but you're not. It's like a weird psychology there, and the whole on-camera thing. I think we've been fed so many images and so much TV, we've been brainwashed and want to be all those things. And I think we want to see ourselves as that. I mean, if you told me, look at how cool you'd be as a cop in a cop show, I'd be like, whoa, that's hard to not see again. I want to see it again. It's cool.
Right.
I think there's a part of us, as we're growing up and maturing, we're just getting a chance to be the movie star. I think all these people who are on camera,
Right.
even with sex, they're getting the movie star out of their system. My generation, They went to California and failed.
Right.
So it's interesting. It's a pseudo way that way, but I don't know. I mean, my son is young, so I hear all the stuff. And he's a Gemini, so I hear all the stuff.
Yes.
And I'm amazed at where that generation is. So okay, I think this is not one that's really trending well, like in Kansas. Couples revealing.
I don't know about those Kansas straight married women. They do these things too. They go on OnlyFans and do their nursing outfits and stuff like that.
Well, yeah.
So you'd be
There's that
surprised.
component too. We're gonna talk about that at the end. Yeah. Okay. So here's another trend. We'll do another trend. This one is about polyamory and open relationships. Getting together, knowing that you can also get together with someone else. Is that going to be the new thing in America? Are we going to be always expecting to keep dating in a Seinfeld world?
again, like these questions you're saying, like these things have always been around,
I didn't
right?
say it was
And
brand
so,
new. I said, is it the next coming up next? It hasn't,
I
it's been
know,
all
but
around, but
let
it's been with, weird people.
me
and
explain though. I'll explain what I
artifice
mean by
and-
that. Yeah, I was saying what I mean about it. It's been around. It will be, but I think it'd be more accepted is what I'm trying to say, right? Because it wasn't so accepted back in the time. So we're coming to times we're seeing all these different modalities. I just think now we're seeing the diversity of where people are at and accepting it now instead of it being under the radar.
No, what I'm surprised is that, you say hi to someone and it's a couple inviting you in. You're like, what? Like I'm saying that did not happen in the past. That did not happen with, average people. That was an exclusivity for people who thought they were truly in power of their own desires.
Right.
They just did what they
Right.
want. Now it's like a lot of people, are very comfortable with that or whatever. It's just interesting to watch. So I'm saying, yeah, interesting.
But do you get what I'm saying? Do you get what I'm saying as far as though about that though how it appears like it's a big thing, but it's just we're just accepting it and more aware
Yes,
of it.
I totally
now.
do. I mean,
it's not like
it's being
everybody's doing
recognized.
it.
It's being recognized in society. It's coming out of the closet. In itself.
Right. Right.
Society is coping with it. How much do they know already? How much do they do it secretly already? That's the interesting thing here. It's
Right.
like,
Well, because people will start saying because they start seeing these things, they think it's a norm when it's not. It's just we're being more exposed to that. But I think that a lot of people are afraid about that. Like, oh my gosh, am I going to find relationships? Because now everything's all about open relationships. Like, just because you're seeing it doesn't mean it's the majority of everything either. I think people have gotten lost because of these trends.
but this is the first time the majority has been interested in it.
True.
That's the thing. It's become pop. That's what I'm saying. It's like
Yeah.
it's not hidden secret anymore.
Right.
And it's interesting. And honestly, when it comes to this one, the polyamory, I think first of all, men have always been this way. That's why we cheated. Because at the inherent, I think men are kind of wired this way. Even in animal packs and everything else. So I think to some degree, I'm imagining that's men pushing for this. But I'm also amazed to meet women who are just as hot and there's no threat, there's no jealousy. So it's like there's a new boundary structure working there that y'all ought to sell. You know what I mean? Like because you're very confident when I see it happening, and it seems like I talk to more and more, particularly younger, like 20 somethings that will identify that way.
Sure.
So it's interesting. So I think that's shifting now. Yeah, but it's always happened. I mean, even like we can always make that argument. I mean, humans have been pervs all back and forth, up and down since the beginning of time.
Yeah, exactly. But I think this is a manifestation that we're actually becoming more objective as a collective. That's how I see this, because now we say, wait, that exists. It's all here, and we're integrating with it. That's why people are having a lot of issues, getting along because they can't believe these people exist, right? And so I just think that now we're becoming tested on the spiritual level. That hey, look, how much can you take? Look, how much can you accept? How much can you be objective on and appreciate and allow without judgment? I think that's what this period's about for me.
Polyamory is what is in heaven. Everyone's been with everyone.
I mean, hello.
Everyone's helped everyone. That's just the way it is. I mean, this is the idea, kind of energy. But I find it interesting because, from my world and my reality, there are never accidents, even with a lover. It's like there's a lot of spiritual stuff going on and all that concept. And often it's that lust that brings in the spiritual story. So it's like, but it's interesting that we're all talking about it, right?
Yeah,
Gender fluidity. Make no assumption and allow the connection between you and me to be what it is. Gender is fluid and connects as needed in that moment, according to what that fluidity wants in that moment. So it's like, and I've seen this in really interesting in trans relationships.
Yep.
Where I can't remember which way it's transitioning, but the partner of that person would not be what I would thought.
Right.
It's like,
100%.
wow, wow, I wouldn't even put those two together. So I see a lot of like brand new, spirit to spirit. I mean, in those cases, it's like down to the spirit, you are in love with that spirit and you're connected. That is brand new to the United States.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's definitely to Western culture, actually, which is the funny thing, because it was big in Eastern culture. Like Asians revered, they call it the dual spirit, and they still to this day revere it. Like it's like a special anomaly, right? And so, Western culture is starting to now and I think it's been shoved in faces for a reason, But I'm starting to see more people being adjusting to that realization that that exists. So I definitely predict it being more accepted on the mainstream level too. I think that's really we're heading in that direction. It's taking time, but
yeah, and I'm finding interesting combinations of bodies, genders, energy, that we've never seen before. I think out of that will come a lot of interesting realizations about being human that we otherwise wouldn't have seen. Yeah. All right,
Breaking
let's-
molds is what it is for me. Breaking molds, because we have all these molds that we've been trying to do. This will be breaking a lot of molds for people to be a lot more freer. Yeah.
Well, I personally feel like, as far as the polyamory and this particular topic of the fluid gender, I feel like, honestly, humans have been on the earth for a long time, and we're bored. We're bored with the same old stuff. We're bored with the same, doggy style, all this stuff. We're bored with all of it. Like, we need like
Dynamic
new
is
stuff.
boring.
Yeah, I think we've run out of stuff. I think, and we're like, and it's like, let's try everything. Let's see what the flavors are. Let's see what we enjoy. Let's take control of our sexuality as a species, and I think that's what's happening.
100%. But that's evolution. That's the whole point of what that to me. It's like I said before. It's a sign that we're evolved, and we're evolving. That's a good thing. I think that we should pat ourselves on the back on, because that's a sign we've evolved and we're evolving too. So, for the third time.
Awesome. It only took 26,000 years. Okay, the next one. Social media. What it's like in modern days. Your guy or your gal is sharing almost nude pics of themselves with a 500K following. And the other one of you has a OnlyFans page. So that said, what is the truth to that? Is that really happening? I mean, if you look at these sites, it seems like everyone is on this page.
Well, of course that's happening, right? That's been I think that's already been a major trend what the people are doing now because of OnlyFans. But I'm saying, let's go back. I was watching a documentary just recently about back in the 80s about these escorts, these call girls. Right. And they have these escort services, and they were doing the same thing. And, in a sense, it maybe wasn't so much on, posting the pictures online, but they were doing those things while the other hub partner was completely in a different field or not in a sex field, and they made it work. So I think we've evolved digitally in that fact, but I've seen people make those things work, and usually just because the girl's so hot and the guy was a nerd. It's like, I'll do anything to hold on to that relationship. So sure, be a prostitute,
Right.
But there's been a lot of other sex worker, and so I've always kind of studied that space. I was always fascinated by it because of my sexual trauma and understand those different levels. And at a young age, I'm like, wow, some people are so open to that and so not jealous that they can tolerate that. And that says a lot about personal growth, I think. This is a different format.
Yeah, totally. I get it. Well, I was raised in that, so I was as a child thinking those terms. And, I think, honestly, we're behind for the rest of the world. I mean, the United States takes sex as so silly and so, we're just too much nervous around it, just too much around it, as far as our cultures and everything. And in Europe and other places, like, people are so comfortable with their sexuality, it seems. I mean, from afar looking in, and comfortable with who they are and how they express themselves. So I feel like, the fact that we went down the shame rabbit hole was a, detour of Christianity and Judaism, like, making us feel bad about these things in ourselves. So, I would imagine, social media. I mean, what's interesting is, like, now everybody, is a porn star. And was that your dream growing up as a kid? You're like, oh man, I wish I could, like, everyone's a porn star. Well, you got your wish, kid. Everyone is a porn star in the future, and OnlyFans or whatever. And it seems to be something they enjoy, doing and whatnot. So it's almost like a calling card.
Well, and I would say, would you see that collectively on the spiritual level, don't you see that it's not, a lot of people demonize this whole thing about like the sex work and all that stuff, like it's getting that route of sex, but from a spiritual level, I see that it's like forcing us to be more comfortable, more free with it, because we look back in time, we were so repressed sexually. So I'm starting to realize, spiritual, the lesson is that we're supposed to be more comfortable, sexually and free in that nature, and to understand what that is for us and our boundaries. And we're going to get into that in a minute, what those boundaries are for us, personalized. So I from this, it's the human level and the spiritual level conflicts with me, because humans have all this perversion, all this, and then my spiritual is like, you're uncomfortable, you have to get more comfortable. And so I think that's very huge in our culture right now on the spiritual level, that evolution.
Yeah, well,
I mean,
I say, never restrain. I mean, I think honestly, ancient Rome is a lot more healthier sexually than we are.
Right.
And we're all smacked up. We're not having intimacy, and Constantine couldn't control it. And that's one of the reasons why the Bible came about, was because, like, no, this is one God and one rule, and this is it, and you're all going to hell because you sleep with each other. It's like, Emperor, we've been sleeping with each other in bathhouses for 500 years.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, and they try to stop it. So, but it seems like, you see other cultures are mature about it, and this will do when we come back from the break, but, I know in France it's common to have like a lover, and you both know you have a Mr. and Mistress, and that's the way that marriage works. They have the two. So it's not brand new. But America, I don't know. So with that, we have a word from you, sir.
Do it. Well, relationships could be challenging, and we kind of just brushed over little topics here just to make one initial point, but sometimes you need someone to bring guidance and bring some sort of solutions, insight, and oversight to what you're going through, both internally and the external world. So you can book a session with me, scottcruzepm.com. That is my website, but I'm also doing live shows where I also do live readings, and tomorrow's show is called Supernatural or Super Real. It's every Thursday. I do a live show, 6 p.m. Pacific time, 9 p.m. Eastern time, and tomorrow we'll just be discussing, again, what is mystical and what is actually, in your mind or not in your mind. Is it real? Is it not? So we'll get into the depths of what that is when it comes to the metaphysical spaces tomorrow night. And again, scottcruzepm.com if you want to book a personal one-on-one with me, and all the details are there.
And yes, Scott is.
Scott Cruz is popularly known for his life-changing one-on-one readings to also guiding your soul ascension journey. With life readings, get insight into your relationships, career, health, trauma healings, past life regressions, and more. Want to connect with a loved one who's transitioned? Scott's mediumship session can be the gateway to you and your loved ones in spirit, bridging the gap between the physical and the spiritual realm. If you want to enhance your own psychic ability, Scott's Intuition Builder session can help expand your psychic and mediumship abilities. So sign on to scottcruzepm.com to book your own personal session today.
Come alive.
I didn't realize the commercial was going to be played. Otherwise, I wouldn't have described all of that. I'm just saying, wrong commercial.
Oh, yeah, there you go. Well, you can still subtitle. It's a good program, y'all. And check Scott out on Thursdays. He'll be live tomorrow. So it's working out perfectly as far as kind of hanging out with each other one way or another with our group.
Yeah.
So we haven't talked about the weather itself. The astrology has been, kind of bonkers in some ways. Not in like dramatic bonkers, but just, life-changing things are going on. We've had some squares. Mars squared Uranus. And this was just, actually this is coming up last weekend, Mars squared Uranus. So there's a lot of like turbulence and stuff that happened right going into this week, as far as just like the universe saying, come on, you need to get you in line with you, basically. And Jupiter enters enter Cancer June 9th. And so that means that we're expanding our, resolution of our capacity to feel ourselves. So people have been sort of tuned down themselves, who haven't listened to their feelings, haven't noticed that they're hurting, suddenly now may feel it and feel the weight kind of coming on. So, all this while we've been trying to launch a new way of thinking, and ideally you would have come to a new breakthrough in the last week or so. So this week, although a little chaotic with a lot of interruptions, ideally you would have seen some sort of breakthrough as far as having your mind set on something you've been back and forth about maybe forever. And finally you think this is the way to go. Your mind's going to put all the chips on there and go for it. So it's kind of a, preparing for the rapids, which will be what Cancer is. We'll be in the rapids at that point. No.
Well, this week specifically for me, I just like to say it's about value, because value of yourself, value about what you want to do, value of things that you've been doing. So I really feel like there's a realization of that this week primarily, which I agree with you, Christopher. That's the kind of the pull, universe kind of pulling you and saying, look, this is what you're worth. And so you might get complimented. You might see things pan out in a way that you thought before. And so understand the value that you have behind that and what you can do to apply value in a different expression is the point of this week. And that's going to lead you into the following week where things kind of, you start feeling that movement actually happen. And so, and going forth in your life, intellectually, emotionally, spiritually, just to summarize, it'd be different, of course, in every dynamic. But so yeah, I would say this week it's about the value. And I know it sounds cliche. I know a lot of times people say, oh, what does that even mean? It's like, what are you putting value in? And actually acknowledging your own set of values now and embracing it and not diminishing it.
Yeah.
I have to say that because so many times you tell people about value and they just, they get so confused because they don't understand well, I don't feel valuable. So then how, it's like, well, what are you valuable at? And what is valuable to you? What do you value? And what do you choose to want to, I think people get so lost in that conundrum that I want people to understand that it is what you're putting into it, how you're putting it in.
Yes, I agree. And astrology agrees, and step astrology agrees. In the sense that, value is 10, the number 10, and number 10 is something you love about yourself, protected, wrapped, branded, so ultimately your wealth comes from within. If you're basing your value outside yourself, then that's where you're losing. It's right there, because honestly, nothing outside of you can define what's in you. Plus, they don't even know what you plan to do. They don't even know what you can possibly, you've got all these secrets of what's possible. So Uranus was at step 28, 29 Taurus this week, and it's been trying to innovate our perspective of values since 2017. So in 2017, Uranus entered Taurus, And I remember that because it got fucking heavy. Suddenly it was hard. Suddenly I was getting pulled on as a
Right.
Taurus. I was juggling with no problems, never dropping a ball. And Uranus hit Taurus, and I was like, "Boom! What was that?" Like certainly taking hits from left and right, and I have been the whole damn time. I think it's hard for Taurus because we have a singular idea of where we're going, and Uranus is like, "No, you're not. No, you're not. You know, like now where you belong." To the whole. So it was a lot of surprises. Good luck, Gemini. Just kidding.
Yeah.
But I feel like what you're feeling is for that value question. I mean, was it 28, 29? That ultimately is a calling for Uranus saying, Uranus, you're a master, Aquarius, saying, hey, it's time to, where do you belong when it comes to your worth? Where do you belong?
That's right.
Like we hear it. Universe needs to hear it to reflect it.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people had struggle about whether they believe that or not. But a lot of it comes down to how you feel. I mean,
yeah, of course. Well, that's your guiding point. I mean, that's your navigation, and I think that once you understand what you feel, both either negative, positive, it's just reflecting what's unresolved or resolved, or what you need to elaborate more, expand upon more.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think that I always tell people they over mystify mysticism or they over intellectualize things that are very simplistic in their life. If you just look at the obvious, again, I always say creating a set of values does come from what you feel. Creating that new set of values of what you want to reach toward, it comes from how you feel. And the more in tune you understand what's going on internally with how you feel and what's processing all that intellectually, you become objective to that and more I would say detailed about that in your mind. Then you can navigate anything, almost anything, because nothing will be a deterrent. Like, oh, okay, I know how to drive around that. Oh, okay, I know how to maneuver around that.
I'm on with you 100% there, and I feel like the emotional maturity was keeping people from doing things they would have otherwise done. And I think Jupiter Cancer here is now to help us all mature emotionally. And now that we see it was just all boogeyman and bad dreams and didn't really come true, like now we can sort of face it realistically. But I also feel that, if you feel like $1 million, you are $1 million. I feel that feelings are the great viral technique. It goes viral from emotion because you're just like, oh my God, you see Scott? And it's like, oh my God, I've never seen my husband this way. He's really excited about Scott. Hey, did you know about Scott? Like, so it's like, people feel each other's emotion. That's what gives it value. More people feeling that might be valuable, that might be valuable. All these people starting to consciously hold it in value and feel it. That's the thing. If you don't feel it, it doesn't go far. That's what I found.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's true. I mean, I think it's like your laser gun, basically, like your emotion, energy, emotion. So like you push that forward, you can actually catapult yourself forward in that newer reality, thus be more perceptive how to attract it in line with it more psychically. So 100%, yeah. So, we have to be identifying what we are feeling and also understand how to use feeling, like you're saying. And a lot of people don't know how to use the feeling. It's like, I feel crappy. Let me push that energy of feeling good. And you start doing that within action. Of course, yes, that will manifest that new perspective, but there's a deeper work too. And I think people maybe don't associate the two as the same thing about projecting that emotion and putting things into a better view. I think they just say, oh, that's just faking it. And I hate when they say you're making. It's not that. You're evoking an energy,
Yeah, there's a lot that goes on. I mean, I think until you realize you're the one calling for it, you'll continue to attract people that feel the way you feel, but you're not willing to say. And so what happens is, like, when people attract each other, have similar feelings, so they're both stuffing down. Once they're in front of each other, it's like they sort of call each other out. And so emotionally, there's like, as a result, because neither of you want to feel that in that moment, neither of you want to face that in that moment. A lot of times, it's blamed on the person you met, when really they were just a similar energy, similar vibration, struck similarly and upset similarly. And so, but we will learn to get to a point where as soon as you see the person, you're like, oh, what have I done? Like not even, interact. I think the next phase for us, and then when I say phase, 9 months to a year, is observing. I think we're going to observe, because what's happening with Jupiter and Cancer is now you can trust your feelings. And that's a first in this lifetime. And that's still with, all the poisons in the food throwing us off and, calcifying our third eye with toothpaste and all that shit. We still actually are waking up anyways. And the more you get to know how you feel about things, like just an inventory of how you feel. Like, I feel this way, and that makes me feel that way, and I feel this about this, but think about that.
Exactly.
That inventory actually allows you to see intimately into other people like you never have.
It's your spec sheet. It's your
Totally
spec
is.
sheet. It's like telling you everything good and everything that you're confused with or not. It tells you everything. That's why I pay attention to every little feeling and go through that rabbit hole, until I find direction of where what it's really the bigger picture is. I mean, I value that so much more now than gaining material things. Because once I understood that point there and took advantage of that and understand how free we really are and can be, I'm like, I value that state more than anything in my existence right now, because it says I can navigate. I actually know what's going on. I am the creator. I am actually able to manipulate and be the magician here. Got it. Therefore, nothing is conditional anymore. It's all about that feeling and that awareness and that that intellect and wisdom that you seek.
Yes, I agree.
So
That's the kind of
powerful.
conclusion I made in Jupiter. Well, I'd always thought that and theorized it, but now that Jupiter has gone through Gemini, the sun's gone through Gemini, and we're going to wrap up Gemini in the next 3 days. Like tomorrow's step 28, we're going to commit to a feeling. We're going to hold that feeling, and as a source to kind of organize the rest of our consciousness, and then boom, we've launched this new thoughtware. And in this new thoughtware, this is the first time where I'm like, no, I don't think there's anything that can get in the way, but me. It's always, if that's the case, the only thing that's ever been in the way is me.
Right.
Like the realizations, like of of the Russian dolls, coming out of a Russian doll.
Yeah, right.
Acts of conscious, or like, what that means? Well, that means. Well, that means. And it's just like, I don't even have enough time to sit around and just ponder what that means. I got to like book it. I'm so busy with the old 3D slavery life storyline.
Right. Right.
Working for the man, got to pay the taxes. So,
but we have to stop doing that. If it's not the government, it's God. If it's not God, now it's the universe that's punishing us. So we got to get out of that, that predicament and understand, like, there's nothing that's blocking you. There's nothing that's preventing you. There's nothing that's judging you. It's you. We're the big guy that we have to answer to. I think people should now go inward to understand that. I've been seeing a lot too, Christopher, before we move on. I know we could move to the next segment, but that so many people are starting to like diminish the need for a savior. Right.
Yes.
And I put that figuratively.
Yes.
Right. And so, and I'm not just talking about the Christian. Right. And so it's saying it's my power, and so, that comes with everything we said before: trust and realization, value, feeling, and going for the feeling to understand what the bigger picture is. And so I see that evolution coming in our collective.
Well, yeah, definitely. Well, that's the thing. That's why we've been poisoned and lied to, because if we could trust our feelings, the gig would be up. I honestly feel that, there are, I don't understand this side, the dark or the gray or whatever, the people who learn from the opposite.
Right.
It's always in all species or whatever, it's in ours. And, they've gone way far, in this particular instance, farther than keeps some normal balance when people realize what's really layers and layers and layers of corruption, really. But that said, the flip side of this is that the only thing we've allowed is them to talk us into thinking something else, and that's it. Like, at the end of the day, well, now they don't believe you. What do you got? Nothing. Right? So it's immediate emancipation, in that sense of our consciousness, of our abilities to create. And and so that, to me, that's thinking of, okay, how do we do this? Real practical. So I think this is like a movement of the Age of Aquarius kind of starting.
I agree. Yeah. I agree. 100%. It's a good way to close that.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
It's a great way to close that.
We're under a commercial. And we come back, we're going to talk some more about what love costs you and how it costs you your power.
Okay.
Fun stuff. From the creators of 40 Days of Past Lives and Karma and 40 Days of Self-Love comes the class you've been waiting for, an introduction to Step Astrology. That's right, I'm sharing some of my inside secrets on how to read a chart according to Step Astrology and help you interpret the stars, whether it's for yourself or for clients. Keep a lookout for us coming soon.
Did you know that discordant energies such as illness, trauma, violence, and depression can linger on a property for hundreds of years, going all the way back to the very beginning of that parcel of land? This can also happen with family heirlooms, antiques, or again previously owned furniture. If you've been feeling blocked in life, more ill than usual, or again just uncomfortable in your home, your space could be holding onto residual energies. Refresh My Property can help clear these energies remotely. Scan the QR code to get your free phone consultation today and begin clearing your space and your life.
guess he didn't make it back in time to his bathroom break. So we have a lot of things within, dynamics in our relationships. I think it's important that we do, get into what happens when we get into certain parameters. There's so many different parameters we find ourselves in, so many different reflections like codependency, all these other dynamics of relationships that we need to understand that if we're in a certain situation that's not matching your higher purpose or your higher desire and what you're wanting in your relationships, then you might be in a situation that's trying to teach you that. And so a lot of people, when they talk about codependency, a lot of people are very ashamed about codependency because they feel that, I shouldn't be dependent on somebody else and I can't be dependent on me. And instead of working through the codependency, they're left kind of judge themselves about getting out of those circumstances. Instead, because codependency is a great teacher, in my opinion, what are you needing from the person? And a lot of times I see codependent relationships to where they actually are helping each other to evolve, but they're also needing to evolve outside of codependency and understand what that independence is. And that's that personal sovereignty we've been talking about this whole time. And that personal sovereignty, for one, has a lot of definition behind it, not just in a conditional sense. Personal sovereignty really comes from the freedom of expressing yourself without limitations and freeing to create your patterns, create your paradigm without any restrictions or reservations. And understanding that there is no judgment as such keeps that freedom of your experience, of your expression. And when you bring that in relationships, you will understand you don't have to necessarily bend yourself too much in compromising positions, both literally and physically. You don't have to compromise so much that you're meeting people where they're at and vice versa. And so it's about a matching experience with those relationships. And so that's what personal sovereignty really means, is because you're able to free to express whatever you want without reservation and not allowing yourself to be bent, right, and conform to others' wishes and needs of you. And I Christopher and I say for a long time that a lot of us have religious karma, unresolved karma that we've been resolving in this current timeline. And that brings a sense of judgment to us. Judging, but we're in this box, we're trying to get out of this box. And I think, when we understand what personal sovereignty really is, it is evolving from that structure, the religious structure, the condemning structure, the structure of, limitations and so forth. So, but sometimes these codependent relationships, they can help you to understand that by understanding what the needs are, vice versa, right? So that's very important to identify. Don't judge these situations that you're in, right? Don't judge the circumstances you are because it's not, I would say, conforming to the norm or to traditional values. Understand it's an expression you're trying to get out and to prove and to express and reveal within your life. Thank you.
Right
Take
on.
over.
Look, I'm convinced that we're in a reality game right now, a role play game up from heaven. And after a few hundred lifetimes, it's like, yeah, make me the cowboy that is into, women's underwear and sells them on the black market. Make me that guy. Make me that guy. He sounds cool as hell, man. Like, I think we get to this point where we're just like, and we get down here like, oh shit, this is real. This feels really real. This is intense. The baby crying is like, oh my god, what I signed up for. Coming out
right.
of the womb. So yeah,
I want to say one thing. I want to say one thing too with Dr. Christopher, because I want to see if you've heard this before or agree, because you see a lot of women who've had conditionally married their husbands, built a family, but they never really loved them. It was all conditional. And then now that their kids are grown, they don't know what to do and leave that relationship. And I always say, you were not ready for true love when you wanted to be a mother, because a lot of people want to be a mother, but they have a biological clock to get that in gear. Mm-hmm. Sometimes we have relationships just for this fact of it's conditional, just to have children, and you'll find true love later. And I think I find a lot of women judging themselves to that, saying, well, if you were to wait for yourself to be ready to fall in true love and have that true partnership, you'd be too old to have actual kids, right? The time clock would have been far out. So, I don't know if you agree or hear this a lot. I try to remind people that the conditional relationships to get you to have children and have a family is very important too, if you're not ready for romance or the romantic love that we talk about in Disney movies.
Okay, you unpack a lot there. I feel that, first of all, that's over. I don't think, look at it's all polyamory, man. They're not going to be forced into anything now. What's so funny?
I agree. I was getting deep with that aspect of it, because I just see a lot of people worried about it. So my passion is into the fact that people are deal with this so much, so.
Oh yeah, no, our generation, because it wasn't when we were born, and we are the ones surfing that crazy ride. I'm amazed at the young kids who come in or they already have those attitudes, and it's like, we hit that shit from you. How'd you get those attitudes?
Right.
For the most part, I think the Gen X was always like, okay, we're still last generation's straighten up, But the codependency aspect, I will say this: people are working through it. It's like
Yeah.
when I started, that was a new buzzword, like, and we worked through in our, in alcoholism and in, addiction and then, through serial dating. It's like all these different ways of being codependent and being stuck. And
Right.
all of it for the same reason. You didn't feel like you could nurture yourself by yourself. You didn't feel like you could nurture yourself to, calm or regular. You felt you needed a study buddy, and so
Right, that's true. Yeah.
you traded dependencies. I'll trade you my
Right.
dependency for yours. Okay, great. So, and you enable, got it. That's,
Right.
but now it's kind of like, we're so aware. It's like, and we've worked through the whole, what's the word? Can't think of a name now, but what's the narcissist? Like the whole narcissist wave is about ending too, which is extreme forms of these types of things. So I see these things drying up.
Well, yeah, that definitely finding its balance for sure. For sure, finding its balance, and so, and again, like codependency relationships, like you said before, it's just that sharing experience. And so I would say whatever the experience is, just be aware of what you're doing, not so much judging because you're doing it. Like, okay, why am I doing this? Where's this going?
Yeah.
Just being a little objective in that. And so then you grow out of it.
Everyone's going to have to be, in one lifetime or another, try it. Like I don't think you can not try it, whatever it happens to be in your life. So I think it's going to happen. But another point here that's on this list is how we internalize others' expectations, desires, or fears as our own when they're not. So this is like, I can't tell what the society's on this one, but I definitely know that I became the person they wanted me to be. And that was automatic. That was from my parents.
That's where it comes from. Yeah.
Yeah, but
Religion.
that comes from past lives. I guess it's it's survival manipulation. I think it comes from working for royal courts, like not as the world, but on the other side, just like like just anything you need, you got it. But is that still happening? I don't know. Again, with the younger, I don't feel so. We're just with our generation. I feel like we are awakened and we realize now. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like we're coming out of that because you see a lot of light workers now. They're kind of concluding their like over empathy to others, right? And the need to have to do everything for others. So because I've been working with a lot of empaths like this, and they're like on that precipice of like, okay, I'm done making excuses. I have to help everybody. So I've been seeing an evolution out of that. Yeah, find the balance and footing of that. I said when you were still on the potty that we still have a lot of religious trauma, and so that judgmental trauma, we're getting rid of that too, which is allowing us to be more free and thinking outside the box.
Yeah, I
a lot of
think
us have that
actually
collective religious
healing of
trauma.
religion. So what's that?
I say a lot of us have that collective religious trauma unresolved from our past incarnations, and that a lot of us have been growing out of that.
Almost over it. I mean, we're almost over it. I mean, I'm trying to think of a place where I see it's still extreme. It's having a hard time, and when I say having a hard time, I mean that people are not even exploring their psychic side because they're still afraid they're getting troubles from somewhere, and they're starting to come out in readings now. They're starting to, so I see that happening. And then also, I feel that even people who are going to church have accepted that they're the rare, they're mild rare, and so it's not this. I don't feel this judgment of me not being Christian from others.
Yeah.
I don't feel like judgment anymore. It feels like they're cool with me going to hell. They're cool with it.
It's true. It's still true.
Right.
But I think we've pretty much putting the people pleasing to the side. I totally feel that because look at our social medias. Everyone's like all about themselves. I'm taking a selfie here. Look what I'm eating. It's so important that you need to know what I'm eating now. So it's like, it's been very more, like I said, the egotism, but I think we need a little bit of that too, to kind of like feel, hey, we are the shit now. Let's do something productive about it. So.
Yeah. People pleasing still's got me. I wake up and I'm like giving them CPR. I'm like, who is this? Something takes over. So that's how extreme. Like this thing, I lose consciousness and I'm like mouth to mouth. And I'm like, how'd that happen? True. Like I still can't. I just want to help the person who's hurting me. I just want to help them. Can you help? Hurting me? So I was stuck in that one. I'm still working my way out of that one, but I'm getting closer, to.
Yeah, but when, and a lot of people, I see it all the time, and it happened to me too. There comes a point where you do it too much, and then your life takes a spiral down, and then
there's definitely a point when that happens. What are you talking about?
Yes.
There's definitely a point.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So, but I see a lot of that happen, and people, have to understand, like, that's an empath that's finally understanding that it's time to focus on themselves. And so, but I've seen a lot of that, as of late. So,
yeah.
So, yeah, I would think it's changing.
There's also, fear of abandonment. That's a huge one. That's still gripping the world because people don't understand that if you're afraid of losing someone, It's because you've already lost yourself. If you're afraid of losing someone in your life, you've already lost yourself.
Yep.
Yourself is saying, "Mama." You know, I'm thinking like it's Queen
Right.
song.
That's true.
Mama. But it's like it's sort of like your inner child screaming up to you, like, "Hey, mofo, we're in the multi-dimensional universe, and I'm still here."
Right.
And people don't realize where they abandon either. If you feel bad on a Friday and you feel bad on a Saturday, you just abandon yourself for a whole 24 hours. If you let yourself feel bad and do nothing about it, that's abandonment. So a lot of people don't realize that them sitting around feeling bad and all that, A, it's not healthy, of course, but B, it is definitely setting up another round of abandonment because your response to it is the same response you had before. So as soon as what happens when you adopt yourself, then suddenly you don't want people in your life. Like, God damn it, someone's calling again. God damn it. Because you're finally enjoying who you are.
Right.
And you're finally, and so now everyone wants your time and attention because they can feel something's up, too. So that's the other thing. Yeah. So what are your thoughts?
But I think,
about abandonment?
I think, now what that's evolving to is that people are taking fear of abandonment and using that as a tool, as it should be. It's a tool because when you experience that feeling of abandonment, it leaves you so many options to make decisions for yourself.
Yeah,
right?
it does. You are clean.
And then it's like, then you don't have anybody to really judge it. So you are more inclined to go toward it because there's no one around you. So, and so I think it's a very important tool to use. I think it's encouraging people more about being abandoned to be empowered. And so I've been seeing less of that, at least in the spiritual communities and people I work with, less of that victim mentality come through with abandonment, more so about, okay, how do I get through it? Or how could I evolve from it? People are not blaming that anymore, which I've seen a great evolution with the abandonment issue. I think that's definitely evolving as well. And of course, I see this across the board with my clients all the time.
Yeah. And I find also from a God perspective too, there's a moment where, if you haven't had faith in yourself, then the miracles don't happen. Once you start having faith in yourself, then you're not abandoned by God anymore. So it's kind of like, it's going to reflect whatever we are. And that said, we're supposed to go into a whole nother act here in the next 6 minutes. It's not going to happen. But what we can do is talk about, what we can do to balance personal sovereignty and relationships. Like, can you remain personally sovereign and be in a relationship? That's the core thing here. And so can you have it all, basically, with self-trust, for instance? So you speak to this. You're in a relationship.
Well, I could totally speak to this, being Aqua was in a committed relationship and who just moved in with his partner a month ago. You totally can. And the thing is you have to, when you already have checked the box of what personal sovereignty means for you, then you see that in other people. You want it in other people and vice versa. So my partner's the same as me. He still likes to do his independent stuff. I do my independent stuff, but I like to share that. And when you're doing your independent expressions and you're not giving to everybody else in your life, then you start giving it to your relationship. And so I see so many people that when they're not in relationships, they spend so much time with their friends and they're giving all that free energy to their friends, and say, imagine you remove all that and now you have that time to share your independence with someone else who's also that way. That's a balance. And I've definitely found that with my partnership. I'm like, I'm still doing the same thing, the same routine, and he's kind of merging with the same routine too, because he's doing the routine, and because we're together, it works together. And so I'm starting to really see, as someone who's independent for 8 years, single, because I didn't want the relationship stuff. I just want to be independent. And then finding that as an independent person and still feeling such is my way, my reason why I say it definitely is attainable easily. And it actually can help you save a lot of time.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's part of the problem, is that because we do not come together as sovereign in the first place, two individuals, that left this like unspoken idea of like, well, he can fix her or she can fix him. Like, that it was our business. And now I'm at a point where like, no, it's like, if there's something to fix, no, it's not going to work. Like, I just don't even go there. Cause I've been in too many times, and not that it wouldn't help someone be fixed or whatever, but the point is like, now I think we know ourselves, and you ought to be able to know who you are, and you ought to be able to find what you need. And so my assumption is, in the new reality, it will be sovereignty and balanced relationships, because how can you have sovereignty, real sovereignty, and not have balance then?
That's all it is just balance, actually. Having relationship sovereignty and relationship, that's called balance. You're having a dichotomy that you're working. That's, it's a wonderful, I think, to me, honestly, people achieve that when they've actually done the work. They've grown. Really. Because, and even those who are single, like I was saying before time, how many single people are talking about other people's relationships? Have you had people come into your reading saying, can you read my friend's relationship? And it's like, why do you put energy into that? You're spending money to talk about someone's relationship. So remove all those parameters, make that space for it now. And because yes, there is that perfect balance for sure.
Yeah, I think in some cases people learn vicariously through others. You know.
Oh, of course. Yes.
Yeah, it's interesting. The next topic is authenticity as intimacy. Authenticity as intimacy. I guess this is part of the new thing.
Authenticity. I don't know what the hell that means, Christopher. Do you want to elaborate more? Authenticity as intimacy?
Yeah. So basically, I'm intimate because you know everything about me because I have hidden nothing. I've been I basically just read the signal inside me and told you what it is. There's no edit or change or anything. And does that make you closer?
Well, duh, yeah. I mean, I'm surprised that's even a bullet point on here. I mean, and I'm saying that not to be crass. I'm saying because I'm like, that's a no-brainer, right? Because if you understand your personal sovereignty, you're sharing that, then like that, you're already being authentic. You walk in that way, being true. And let's just talk about authenticity. What it means, it just means that you've allowed yourself to, like we said before, feel what you're feeling, know where you're coming from, know what makes you tick, and allowing yourself to understand where you're at is good and where you're going is even better. That's authenticity, and being real about it. Right. And so I always feel like intimacy evokes authenticity. Right. And then vice versa. So, yeah, I think that's something that people are definitely, a lot of people are challenged with that, but people's pasts. I've heard a lot of people, I can't date them because they're past. It's like, well, then were they supposed to lie to you? And then you feel better if they lie to you. And so it's like, it doesn't make sense. And so they're basically saying they'd be happy in a lie. But no, I think people are wanting more of that now. I think, as you've seen with culture, we can go double screen. I think with our culture too, that I think we're starting to notice that people are seeing things that people do, their stories that they never would have fathomed in other people's lives. And I think that's allowing us to be less judgmental and more free to be ourselves. If that makes sense. If I know I stumbled on my words there.
Well, no, I feel like so if you become sovereign, really what's happening, I feel, is that you're saying, I am my own destiny. I am my own destiny. I am what will happen. I am. It's really a step closer to being acknowledging the God in you. So if that's the case, God in you, and you're going to have, because you're into polyamory, you could have many partners and many relationships are all different levels. No, I don't think I'll be authentic.
Right.
I think there's gonna be information. I don't want to. So it's like if you have a lot of relationships going on, does it serve you for everyone to know everything at all times? It's like, no, I don't feel like it serves. I think ultimately what happens, and it's not that I would hide anything. I would simply say, no comment. Something like that. Like, I would never hide. I'd be like, yes, something exists there you have access to, not this salary, like or whatever. But to me, there is some, my friend Gwen English, I love this quote from her. She goes, truth is a privilege, not a right. Mm-hmm. And it's like, yeah, because people can't handle the truth,
It's true. It's true.
So you can't always go there with authentic, because then someone takes that and first thing they use in your first fight, you're like, God, really? I come out and I'm authentic, and now it's the first arrow in the fight.
Right. Well, I mean, that just goes to show you, what is the common phrase? The truth hurts. I mean, I'm like, I hate that fucking phrase. Like, it should not hurt. If you're not wanting to believe in falsehoods, the truth should be freeing, right? It should be, like they say, truth set you free. So yeah, but boundaries to me, boundaries means that you're setting parameters. I like to call it more parameters, because we cannot export everything at once. And it's just knowing your parameters and understanding what is sacred, because I think what we keep secret is sacred. So yeah, some things you might not want to share that are not valuable to another person or doesn't bring any difference to the relationship, and that's quite fine, because we do understand that sacredness. But yeah, I want people to understand not so much of boundaries in this context, but parameters. And what type of parameters do you like? Is it monogamy, or is it polygamous? Is it 4 versus 10? Like, it's just your personalization. And I want to take even further back where it's less judgmental than parameter. It's your own personalization. And so I would like that word better than boundaries, because boundaries sounds like something you're still working toward, that you're still working to fix. And I think that when you're in a relationship, you set your boundaries already, your boundaries already, that we're now adjusting and appreciating and embracing our parameters and personalizations with our relationships.
I look up boundaries and where that comes from. I was looking up incarnation and materialization and manifestation.
Yeah.
Just kind of like getting a feel of all of them, and they're all a shun, like creation. That's interesting, which means I think to appear suddenly,
Yeah.
Boundaries are an issue. I think, my joke is always, if Jesus didn't have boundaries, then all the apostles would have turned into wine with the water. You know what I mean? Like, they don't. He had a boundary. He stopped it from here to there. Like, there's a stop. So we're making a bigger deal of a boundary than it really is. You know what I mean? First of all, you put it there, that means you can move it. They're all flexible, right? Just ask any drunk person in a college bar. It's flexible, a lot more than you think it is, because it's a figment of the mind. But
Right.
but I do feel like if most cases, if you're measuring boundary space, it's about how you feel.
Mm-hmm.
Because one thing that's happened, like this porn, everything else, which is cool, and trust me, I watch porn. I have, it's like, but at the end of the day, it's in your head, and you're in your head. And a lot of times, people make boundaries in their head, like, okay, just 4 toys, whatever. You're like, did you consider how that's going to feel? No, so people don't consider how they're going to feel, and that's really what draws the boundary. It's where you feel safe. And it may not be what you think. In fact, in most cases, if you've been brainwashed by media, you think you have the same boundary as the Kardashians. You don't. You get there in that spot, you don't feel comfortable, you don't feel right. And internet dating will tell you that. Your mind's making up this picture all crazy. You meet the person, you're like, nope.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like,
Well,
because
that's
it's
what I'm saying. That's why I like to
check the boxes.
Yeah, and that's why I like to use the word personalization, because people think that their boundaries has to be someone else's boundaries, or someone else's boundaries got to be their boundaries. Like, no, it's all about personalization. And I want people to understand that when they're really starting to develop their own expression about what type of relationship they want. Because I'm sure you have a lot of clients that don't really want a relationship, but don't really want to be single, but they don't know where they fit in that spectrum. Either no relationship, single, or married. So I think a lot of people are trying to identify and understand it's your own personalization. There's no one judging that, and your boundaries is not someone else's boundaries, and so forth. And so I find a lot of people recognizing that now. I kind of fit in this middle ground. I just want a casual relationship, or just a friend with benefits, and that's okay for me. And so people are starting to appreciate it, and I would say accept that a lot more. I've seen.
I think now that we're accepting that we can be it all, we can do whatever we want.
Exactly.
And,
Simple.
that suddenly puts you in a new frame of mind. Like, well, then what do I want? And
Right.
now that it can be anything, what I mean? Like, because it
Yeah.
can be anything. You'll find something. That's what amazes me. It's like, and she's cool with that. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
It's like, yeah,
Right.
I sure am. It's like, whoa.
She's number
Like,
one fan.
blows my
She
mind.
loves when you like that. Yeah.
This goes against everything I was raised. So in that capacity, really, I feel like we're going to all, but we still have boundaries. I think we have distinctions. I don't feel you can experience real true intimacy without some pretty special bonds. Like, what I mean by boundaries, like, there's something about that person that no one else has access to. There's something about that person that trusts you, surrender, you're going to give up, and I think that's boundaries. Like, it's exclusive. There's sometimes, to some degree, exclusivity turns into greater passion and connection because the band between the two is just so solid and uninterrupted. And so that's the part where I wonder how that's going to evolve for our, the next generation. Will you have intimacy with saying yes to everything in polyamory, for instance? Will that sacrifice intimacy, or will it be hotter? Because now it's just like a smorgasbord. Like, you have as much as you want, I can eat. I don't know. Interesting. Either way, I'll be.
Yeah, I
doing
mean,
research.
you understand what it's like to just be in a state of love and expanding that state of love instead of just monogamy. Not that monogamy is bad. Again, it's all a personalized preference of where you're at in your own karmic journey, and that's what this is all about. And that's how you release the karmic contracts. That's how you understand. Like, okay, I've evolved from these certain parameters. Great, now I can see beyond that. Great, that's a karmic contract I've renewed, so to speak. And a lot of relationships are karmic. I've had a lot of karmic relationships, and they're always hot and heavy right away, and they always create the most anxiety, and they always end in ghosting. Right? On either end. On either end.
Yeah. Eventually. Because it's karmic, you're like, where that road ends. Like, the next life, there you are again. Yeah,
and they
it's
come
so
up like,
funny.
let's get this over with. It gets all hot and heavy. Let's get this over with. Let's not drag it out, and so it comes in really quickly. And but those are things that really do help us build for, releasing those bonds, like we're saying, of those, and setting those personal preferences that we call boundaries. That makes it easier for us to do so, because then we know. Because those karmic relationships that fucking suck.
Oh, I can identify past life, in a nanosecond. I know now, and I've got it down. I find a pattern because I fell into it so many times. So many relationships I didn't have, needed one more conversation.
Yeah.
And several $1,000 getting, but I think it's contracts are something I think we have to work through. Remember, a lot of times contracts is surprising. Like, I've had past life wives that have pointed out to me things that I never saw myself. And they're like, you're like this, right? And I feel it's like, well, yeah, when we were married, that side of me was out all the time. And they come back and they remind me, it's like a way of integrating past life talent into the moment. Or, I've had past life situations where, we both know we're not going to end up with each other. Like, you both know it. And so it's kind of like, in that moment, you're trying to help each other. You're almost coaching each other into the next relationship. It's weird. Because you are romantic. It is having kind of hitting those bells. But there's something deeper in your nose, like, this ain't going to work out. You know what I mean? And that comes from the past life. But then the benefit of that, from that point on, those past life wives are amazing because they're on the phone with me like, no, you are that way. No, you are in relationships. Like, you are. Like, you're like, I am, like, and you listen because not your part. So that's a cool dynamic too, is like having past life references,
100%. Yeah. But those karmic relationships though, they tell you everything about the things that you didn't know anything about yourself. And I think people should, if you're in one now, look at it and say, oh, this is my way of getting myself to really snap out of a haze I've been in for a while and break those patterns. Like, if you're in one now, don't try to push yourself to get out of it right now. Understand that's why you're in it and see why, and then you'll get out of it. And you'll walk away from it like this,
Yeah. And live it, because there might be something there that you need to learn or recognize in your patterns, because that's what's keeping you from the one that's going to really have happiness and have joy. And so a lot of times stay in it and learn it. I mean, I had that same thing in your clients when I was young. I was like, I could leave this, but I'm going to manifest a replica of it. I had done that a couple of times where a replica came in, like, damn it, it's a replica, And so might as well be the original, the devil I know, you know what I mean? Like, so I recommend enjoy it. That's the one thing I'll say in closing, is that I knew always when it was going to be temporary, and some part of me just did not allow myself to enjoy it. I felt guilty. because I was cheating or I was lying and all this stuff. And going back, I should have just enjoyed it. We would have had a great time and it would have faded away on its own. So I recommend everyone enjoy it. Yeah,
right. As long as being honest too. You don't want to be in a state of being dishonesty either. So at some point, if you're in dishonesty, you'll get out of the dishonesty phase and not lying. So I would make sure people might take it that way.
It's late 90s. It's late 90s. No one's psychic. It's not cool to be psychic. And you're picking up that there's a past life, and you're picking up that it's not going to last. Really? You tell your partner that? No fucking way, man. Like, that's the way to end it right now. Like, there's no way back then. I just, what if I was wrong? That's what my mind would say. What if I'm wrong? What if this is all bullshit? This stuff,
Yeah.
So, yeah, interesting stuff, friend, and good talk and conversation about remaining sovereign. And with that, I think it's time that the show gives you your sovereignty. That's all we have for this week. Join us next week as we talk about the energetics of emotions, just in time for Cancer's high tides. Oh, yeah.
Yes. And don't forget to check out my live show tomorrow night at 6 p.m. Pacific time, 9 p.m. Eastern time, every Thursday night, live readings. And the topic is supernatural or super real. Check it out. And we'll see you all next week at same time, same place on LOL.
Until we love you. Don't say goodbye. Read out loud.
Don't put up with a shit show.
Oh my God. Yeah.
I tried.
You did good.
My head is all over the place today.
Well, it's been good for the topic.
Good.
I feel this is a nice little break for me. It's just been real crispy,
Yeah. But I think this is the perfect time for this topic too. Right now, perfect timing.
Totally. And 2 weeks with the hamsters. Oh my God, what are you thinking of being those hamsters?